Released by Capcom in 2010 on the Nintendo DS, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective would be a visual novel adventure game. Written and directed by Shu Takumi, who also created the Ace Attorney series, the game would focus on solving various environmental puzzles in real time with unique interactions called ghost tricks. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation. As the game begins, a spirit wakes up to see a red-headed woman at gunpoint to another man and presumes their own dead body is there in the middle. Within this ghost world, time in the real world pauses as another strange voice tells them they must save the girl even though they are just a soul. However, as a soul, there are unique abilities it has, like the ability to possess nearby objects and manipulate them. With his ghost trick, the red-suited man startles the gunman long enough to delay the fate of the woman just a little, but finds he is limited to a short reach and cannot possess a dead body to help. Unfortunately, the man with the golden shotgun kills the woman and reports his assignment completion. Nearby, the source of the voice turns to him, possessing a lamp, and informs him that while he couldn't save the girl this time, hope isn't lost. Teaching the man more about being a ghost, the voice reveals the man simply gained special powers when he died, which not everyone does. In fact, by connecting to the girl's soul, he can go back into the past 4 minutes before her death and alter events. This oddly specific power only works on corpses no older than a day, and finding it works, the ghost rewinds time to see the girl right when she found his body freshly shot and the hitman saying the last traces of Temsic are to be eliminated. Rewriting the past, the ghost is able to buy the girl more time, and through possessing a ladder that's technically a stepladder, he's able to reach a wrecking ball and flatten the killer. Now that the girl's fate is averted, the ghost reflects how he saved someone he doesn't even know, coming to the horrible realization that he has no memories at all. Not knowing who he was or why he died, the voice, calling itself Ray, tells him his story isn't over yet, though, like all dead, will disappear at the next sunrise. The ghost wonders if he can reverse his own death, but Ray points out he already tried, and the ghost figures he would like to at least know why he died, figuring the girl to be his best lead. As Ray agrees the girl is the key to everything, the ghost follows the girl, passing by the red-suited body where a strange black cat hangs nearby. The timely phone call from the person who ordered his death now rings in, and with his ghost powers, the spirit is able to see the person on the other end and move through the phone lines to them. Before the ghost leaves, Ray says he's about out of energy but leaves one last message that there will be a lot of strange events tonight, and the ghost is the only one who will be able to find out the truth behind it all, which will also solve the mystery of his murder. Racing against the clock now, the ghost overhears his murderer order the girl, named Lynn, to be taken out as well. In addition, the foreign assassins refer to him as Sissel while mentioning a deal going down tonight for some world-changing power. Hearing now that another hitman had been sent to Lynn's apartment, Sissel jumps over there to see the hitman laying in wait beside a little girl that's tied up beside a dead little dog. Connecting to the dearly departed doggo, Sissel finds the Pomeranian has retained his memories, introducing himself as Missile and wishing to save his master, Camilla. Using him as a gateway to the past, Sissel rewinds time to see Camilla enjoying music with headphones on, not hearing her upset neighbor, nor the hitman who enters and immediately shoots Missile. Redoing events, Sissel manages to distract the two long enough to save Missile as the assassin gets word that Lynn is still at the junkyard and leaves. Before following him, Sissel is somehow able to connect to Missile despite him being alive, and stranger still, Missile remembers his time being dead somehow. At the same time, Lynn calls Camilla, warning her of the danger and telling her to meet at the Chicken Kitchen restaurant on Dead End Drive and instructs her to bring a particular music box with her. However, a man with a bird approaches Lynn, startling her and Camilla, who drops the phone with Sissel in it. Unable to leap to where Lynn is, Sissel hears the phone ringing in the apartment next door where the irritated neighbor is, and thinking to borrow her line, moves in that direction. Saying goodbye to Missile again, the little dog tells him he won't give up on saving the girls and tries to open the door on his own, determined to make his own path. Meanwhile, Sissel sees the woman next door as a struggling writer trying to find inspiration at the bottom of a bottle, while also tending to her fever-stricken daughter, Amelie. The little girl points out today is her father's birthday, wanting to call him, and is aware her parents are fighting over something. Sissel makes it to the phone in time to linger for a short conversation with the woman's husband, the justice minister, begging her to return home, and he returns to the junkyard to see a forensics team examining his dead body. Ray informs Sissel that Lynn was taken into custody by the police as well, who mentioned Lynn was a rookie detective with ties to top investigator Inspector Cabanela of the Special Investigation Unit. Swaggering onto the scene is the light-footed Inspector Cabanela himself, who is also overseeing a stakeout in the park at the same time, who declares with a flair that he'll be the one to interview Lynn as a suspect. As the doctor on site explains, the cause of death was likely the shot through the chest in Sissel, and nearby is Lynn's gun, further implicating her. Following a call for the doctor to the superintendent's office, Sissel finds Lynn has been shot through the window right in front of the inspector and the bird-bearing superintendent. Connecting to Lynn's soul, Sissel tries to remind her of who she is, but she mistakenly assumes the form of Cabanela, misunderstanding that she's the dead one. Getting caught up on the situation, Lynn goes with the flow of her post-mortem predicament, bringing up it was Sissel who invited her to the junkyard for some reason. Sissel tells her he is going to revive her and in return asks her to find out who he was and why he was killed by tomorrow morning. However, Lynn is reluctant to agree as she knows she was already investigating something very important to her and so cannot make that promise. Smirking, Sissel understands but promises to save her anyway, telling himself that with her blunt honesty, he feels he can trust her. Rewinding time, Sissel uses the opportunity to crush another hitman to save Lynn, and alive again, Lynn makes a call to the prison before escaping on her own. Chasing that lead, Sissel leaps over to overhear Lynn calling the prison again to try and talk to someone but be denied. Leaping back to Lynn, she's been killed again, but this time by a bizarre Rube Goldberg machine with a lethal conclusion. Sissel saves her again, but they both wonder what's in this room that's worth killing someone over. At this time, Lynn shares she's trying to solve a murder case by herself that was allegedly solved but knows they convicted the wrong person. However, Sissel tells her what he learned with Missile and Camilla, warning her that there is a target on her back. Still uneasy about Sissel, Lynn makes a deal that she'll cooperate with him if he does her the favor of sneaking into prison and learning the work schedule for prisoner D99 tomorrow. Telling him to meet her at the chicken kitchen, Lynn sneaks out of the junkyard to go on ahead as Sissel splits off and learns the prison was built to hold those related to special cases. For example, one prisoner called C38 was imprisoned for publicly leaking national secrets as part of their band's performance. Another, labeled C74, assaulted the police commissioner's office with a flamethrower, demanding good curry. Sissel also learns about D99, who was found guilty of shooting his wife, yet the case is somehow a matter of national secrecy. Finding the prisoner, who is painting something in his cell, Sissel learns he has forgotten how to read, but it doesn't matter because the man is not assigned anything tomorrow. Finally, he also learns D99's identity is Jode, a detective still well respected among the police, and is shocked to see he has painted Sissel's portrait as a means to never forget him. Soon after, the prison gets a call from the police chief and Cabanela, and spying on them, Sissel sees security footage presented by Cabanela of Lynn shooting Sissel, though something seems off. The chief points out the scene of the murder and the place where the body was found are different, and the inspector reveals it was just a random black cat that tampered with the body. Suddenly, they get an alert from the stakeout point that they have set up, reporting that Lynn has been spotted, but this is soon followed by the sound of a crash. As Cabanela calls the scene, it turns out the stakeout point is the Chicken Kitchen restaurant, as Sissel borrows the phone line to travel there to find Lynn has perished yet again. Sissel immediately asks her about why the video showed her shooting him, but she swears she doesn't remember the details of that meeting at all and denies being the one to shoot him. Seeing this as a dead end, he then shares Jode's blank schedule, and horrified, Lynn explains this means he's to be executed tonight. She also adds the reason she said to meet up here was because Sissel's body had a note on it to be at the restaurant at this time, which makes Sissel think the police were originally looking out for him. She asks what he'll do if it turns out she did shoot him, and he says he'll still save her for now as they still don't know everything, like who he was and why he was killed. Understanding, the two form an uneasy alliance, agreeing to at least use each other until they get their respective answers. Rewinding time, Sissel sees Lynn die after pushing a waitress to safety first, but also observes some foreign agents here for the deal who are also aware of the confidential incidents involving the special case prisoners. Seeing the driver of a van crash through the restaurant and die as well, Sissel thinks to connect to the driver's soul and go back 4 minutes beyond then to stop the wreck from happening. As it turns out, his attempt to eavesdrop on the foreigners in the restaurant causes him to crash in the first place when his receiver overloads and knocks him out. However, the receiver starting this tragic chain of events was all placed by the waitress, who was another undercover agent for the police, and by sourcing and switching the bug chicken, Sissel is able to save everyone. Having saved Lynn, Sissel feels it's time she told him about the case she's working on, and she begins by saying Jode is her hero, having saved her life 10 years ago. Another thing is Inspector Cabanela, his friendly rival at the time, who has taken care of Lynn since Jode's arrest 5 years ago, smoothing her way through her detective career while aggressively climbing the career ladder himself. In addition, 3 days after the murder incident, she received a strange music box from Jode, who told her to hold on to it and give it to a certain person after the case was over and settled. However, she's unable to open the box and doesn't know what's inside. Back in the present, Lynn learns Jode's execution has been moved up and will take place in a few minutes, and nothing short of a stay of execution from the Justice Minister can change that. Alarmed, Lynn tells Sissel to go on ahead to the prison and stop the execution somehow while she goes straight to the Justice Minister. Arriving at the prison, Sissel finds they are experiencing a power outage, spurring one of the guards to literally dance out of panic and caused by an explosion of the electric chair that killed Jode. Connecting to Jode's soul, the detective doesn't have his memories back fully, and so Sissel rewinds time to see Jode die by the chair, but not in the way intended. Fixing things, Sissel prematurely destroys the chair to delay Jode's death, which still causes a blackout and unlocks the prisoner's cells, spurring the two to make a break for freedom. Escorting the detective past the armed guards with night vision goggles, Sissel saves Jode, telling him Lynn has gone to the Justice Minister and he thinks to follow her too, but is caught by Cabanela, who is there to stop him from committing another crime. Held at gunpoint, Joe quickly tells Sissel the ghost is not who he thinks he is and tells him to open the music box with Lynn for more answers. He also adds the reason he was accepting of his death penalty was not for the verdict of his murdered wife, but for 10 years ago when he killed a man in order to save Lynn. As one more favor for Sissel, he calls the Justice Minister's office to open a path for the ghost, telling him not to trust the memories of others and seek out his own truth. With this, Cabanela tosses Joe a pocket watch as he takes him away, and Sissel moves ahead to join Lynn. Finding her not dead for once this evening, he updates her on Jode's situation and finds the Justice Minister is the one dead this time. Connecting to his soul, Sissel sees the overworked man suffer from a fatal heart attack from the stress of a threatening phone call from the foreign agents informing him that they have his daughter Amelie hostage under terms that Jode be executed immediately. At least saving the minister's life for now by getting him his heart pills, the revised president has him debating with Lynn the validity of the trial convicting Jode, as there was no evidence beyond Jode's own confession. Knowing the minister won't cooperate until his daughter is safe, Sissel heads to the hideout of the kidnappers to learn the foreign agents actually stole Camilla, not Amelie. What more, the hideout is actually Camilla's old house, and he notices Camilla has a core, meaning she died recently and was saved. Connecting to her, she says she never arrived at the restaurant, instead cutting through Tempsick Park and was kidnapped, dropping the music box there. She also reveals Jode is her father, and she is the one who set up the Rube Goldberg contraption that accidentally killed her mother, identical to the one in the junkyard. Interrupting them, the female agent announces out loud that she can sense the presence of Sissel, warning him not to try anything as they relocate with Camilla. Reporting this turn of events back to Lynn, Lynn tries to tell the minister his daughter wasn't kidnapped and urges him to call his wife and verify, but his wife won't answer due to her mood. Strutting onto the scene is Inspector Cabanela, bringing Jode with him as Lynn thinks he did so just to take credit and protect his spotless record. Connecting to Joe, the detective is alarmed to hear his daughter is the one in danger, but is willing to pay the price for her freedom, though Sissel counters it won't end Camilla's suffering. Speaking more to the incident of his wife's death, Jode said Camilla told him her contraption moved impossibly, and before tonight never thought twice about it. However, seeing Sissel and his seemingly impossible powers, now he's not so sure, especially since the kidnappers are also aware of the powers of the dead. Determined now to solve the mystery of his wife's murder with this new information, Jode adds he removed the antique smoking gun that shot his wife, placed it in a box, and gave it to Lynn, who thought it was a broken music box. Digesting all of this, Lynn tells him there is still time to solve the mystery from 5 years ago and prove it was neither him nor Camilla that killed his wife. With renewed hope, Jode agrees, telling her they need to retrieve the gun as important evidence, and Lynn hurries off to the park, telling Sissel to do something about the minister's family problem. Jumping over to Lynn's writing neighbor, he manages to get the daughter access to the phone and call her father, wishing him a happy birthday and assuring him things are fine, and relieved, the minister says to apologize to his wife for almost making a costly mistake. Back in his office, the minister thanks Sissel for saving his daughter, revealing he knows of ghosts and their powers, including controlling people. Sissel admits he has powers, but not the ability to control people, and is curious how the minister knows of other manipulators. Explaining, the minister says the 3 special prisoners all had 2 things in common: a lack of motive in their crimes, and that the nature of their crimes were impossible. It was then theorized an outside manipulator was behind things, and so the prison also doubled as a research facility to that end, with Cabanela leading the studies. After what just happened tonight, he also confesses when he signed Jode's execution, he now knows for sure he was being controlled as well, knowing such powers exist firsthand despite his memory of the event at the time being hazy. It rattled him, but with no proof, he could not openly report it to anyone. Even when he told his wife, she quickly demanded he correct the mistake before innocent people died, going so far to move out with Amelie until he fixed things. But now, he's confident in not only acknowledging ghosts, but their power and interference so far. Cabanela is shaken that everyone in the room can hear the ghost except him and quickly excuses himself as Lynn calls in and says Sissel's help is urgently needed in the park. Arriving, Lynn tells Sissel she hasn't found the box yet, but has found a recently deceased body crushed under a rock in the park. Connecting to the soul and looking back, a peaceful protester witnessed the kidnapping of Camilla, picked up the box she dropped, and somehow was crushed by the park's mascot Giant Rock in an impossible manner. Looking closer, he spots another ghost behind the trick, and connecting to it, it turns out to be Sissel, dead again, but proud to have been able to save Camilla. Sissel asks how he died this time, and Sissel reveals he managed to work past the door of the apartment and follow Camilla down to the park, but was run over by the foreign agent Spike when they were on their way to kidnap her, dying in a crater that emanated with a strange power nearby. As a ghost, he saw he was too late to save Camilla from being crushed by the rock, and in his desperation discovered new powers, including the ability to rewind time like Sissel, and the ability to swap the places of similarly shaped things. With this, he was able to save Camilla while killing the protester, but understanding now, the two ghosts now rewind time again to tag team their powers and save both. Cheering for their success, Sissel now offers to save Missel's life, but the little dog pauses and thinks it may be for the best that he stays dead a little while longer, so as to continue protecting Camilla with his ghost powers. Returning to the present, though Camilla would of course be captured anyway, the protester would now be alive to return the box to Lynn and recognize her from the incident 10 years ago. He leads her to the crater where Missel's body is, and the protester explains this is the site where a meteorite once crashed in the park and is still underground to this day. He recounts how when Lynn was taken hostage by a man in a standoff with Detective Jode, the meteorite crashed down in the park and a fragment struck the criminal, killing him. Dubbed the Temsic meteorite after the name of the park, Sissel wonders why Jode forgot to mention such an uncanny event in his story earlier. Returning to Jode, the detective takes the gun out of the case and reveals how it lines up with the other evidence in the room that concludes the contraption killed his wife. Convinced, the minister orders a stay of execution for the detective, though the next step is to learn more about the manipulator truly behind all of this, as Lynn feels it's likely she was manipulated into shooting Sissel. Now circling to the topic of Temsic, Jode says it was true the meteorite killed the criminal, but he was going to shoot anyway, admitting he was a young rash detective who was more focused on getting the bad guy. He apologizes for putting her in danger and treating her safety second in that moment, but more to the point, reveals the man that died that night 10 years ago was the man in red, but says that man's name wasn't Sissel. If anything, Jode is more confused why Sissel looks like the man in red. This revelation is interrupted by a call from Cabanela demanding Jode be executed tonight or his daughter will die. Traveling quickly to Cabanela's side, Sissel is shocked to see the inspector is actually shot dead by the man in red, who he thought he was somehow alive. The man in red calls the foreign leader, telling him the job is done, and the foreign man begins the final stages of the deal, revealing he is operating inside of a submarine. Connecting to the inspector's soul, Sissel rewinds time to see the inspector made the threatening call under duress by the man in red, who says he pulled everyone who was involved in his death 10 years ago together like this for simple revenge. Quickly, the inspector shoots the man in red, who crumples over, but then eerily stands up again as if nothing happened, casually manipulating objects in the room to disarm the detective and shoot him dead. The ghost of Cabanela picks up that Sissel looks like the man in red but isn't him, and Sissel agrees, promising to save the inspector at least, but when he rewinds time finds the man in red lacks a core, yet is emanating with the same strange ghost power like him. At the same time, he finds the room below where the recreated contraption was completely demolished somehow, and finds the superintendent dead as well. Connecting to him, he learns the man in red blew up the room, and through him the ghosts all go back 4 minutes even further in the past. They now see Cabanela wait as the superintendent runs a diagnostic on the man in red's corpse as the super identifies his source of power, and Cabanela warns him the manipulator's true form is a spirit. Chuckling, the man in red wakes up and confirms this, saying he did die 10 years ago and this body is just a hollow shell. What more, one of his powers is to control vessels like this shell or other people, confessing he also controlled the Justice Minister and Lynn. He framed Lynn on camera to convict her as a murderer as revenge and turns to the super, calling him a professor, saying he has to die for knowing too much as he sets off dynamite near him and blows up the room, seriously wounding Cabanela in the blast. Afterwards, Cabanela's ghost reveals the entire junkyard scene was set up by the man in red, including the bomb and even the doctor who was inspecting his corpse who made a deal to return his body. Seeing through the fake examiner, Cabanela instead paid him off to have the corpse brought to this room where the professor was to find the source of his powers. To himself, Sissel also thinks it's odd that Ray said spirits disappear at the next dawn, but here is the man in red 10 years later. Not sure how to stop the man in red for now, the professor thinks to at least have Sissel save him from the explosion without the man in red noticing, and just in time, Sissel arrives to lend his aid. Together, they manage to slip the professor away in time to avoid dying, and even fake the death of Cabanela in the split second the man in red shoots him thanks to Cabanela's theatrics. Glad to be alive, the inspector and the professor confessed this event has shown them more than the 10 years of research they've tried to accomplish. With a little time now, Sissel learns from Cabanela that it was his mistake in being a brash young detective that drove the man in red into a corner in the first place 10 years ago, and being so focused on results made an amateur mistake of leaving his gun in reach for the man in red to grab. As for the deal, the man in red was putting himself and his powers for sale to foreigners who were keen to use them, giving them a sample with the 2 special case incidents the other 2 prisoners were arrested for. In fact, he plans to leave the country tonight in a submarine belonging to the foreign country. He also confesses the reason he cares so much about his position and spotless record is because it affords him privileges and resources, including heading research into the manipulator. One of the ways he was using his position was investigating the truth behind the murder of Jode's wife, never believing the detective actually did it, but lacked evidence to prove otherwise. Regardless of Lynn and Jode's own rogue actions, Cabanela was determined to prove Jode's innocence and halt his execution legally, and that meant stopping Lynn and Jode themselves if they stepped outside the law like escaping from jail. Even though stalling for time and looking suspicious made him look bad to Lynn, he knew she would get over it. The superintendent also reveals he was once a medical examiner for the police, and he was the one who performed the autopsy on the man in red 10 years ago. However, he never performed it because the body, despite being dead, has such a strong healing factor that even the incision of the scalpel would heal the moment he tried to cut, with no scarring or blood. The body then disappeared on its own, as if it just got up and walked away, because it did. The scan he did before the bomb went off indicated the body was exuding some sort of radiation, more specifically matching that of the meteorite fragment. In addition, working with Jode is why he has a replica of the murder scene in his basement, and pursuit of his unsolved mystery is why he left the force. At this time, Lynn arrives and is caught up on everything, apologizing to Cabanela for misunderstanding him, and Jode arrives as well, ready to close this case once and for all. Always believing the professor has Jode's old coat ready for action again, as Jode thanks Cabanela for the watch earlier and the inspector wishes him well for this final leg, still too injured himself. A few hours pass, and Jode manages to get aboard the sub, calling Sissel in as his cover is blown. Laughing in defiance, Jode reveals to the foreigners that Cabanela shot the man in red with a tracker, knowing he was trying to run, and gave Jode a receiver in the form of the pocket watch. However, the foreign leader, named Commander Sith, reveals the man in red has left his shell for now to possess Camilla, and chuckles that the man in red has underestimated them too, as they have already researched the source of his powers and quickly extract the meteorite fragment from the shell. Having the last laugh, Sith now jettisons the entire room as an explosion rocks the entire sub while Sissel and Missile arrive to find Lynn deceased yet again. Rewinding back, they see the man in red was hiding inside Camilla with a gun, planning to shoot Jode as he came to rescue his daughter, but the unexpected explosion caused Lynn to save the man in red and Camilla while she was killed by the debris instead. They also see Sith escape in a mini-sub with a fragment, leaving everyone behind to die from a self-directed torpedo. Preventing the torpedo from at least detonating, Sissel alters fate just enough to buy time for him and Missile to guide the girls out of the sinking sub. However, the man in red is still on board as well, forming a giant claw and surprisingly saving the two, and calling out Sissel, aware all along that the unnatural events all evening must have been the work of an enemy standing nearby. Confronting him, Sissel drops his self-image, unwilling to maintain it and demanding to know who he really is. With a makeshift body, the manipulator backs off, defeated, and admitting the foreigners got him good this time, getting away with the fragment too. Stuck here with no way out, he decides to explain everything, revealing the meteorite actually gives the living and dead powers individually, assuming they died while exposed to its radiation, and those powers actually change and grow over time. Also, the meteorite allows one to replay the moment of death like Sissel's rewind ability, though in his case, with the fragment stuck in his body, it was constantly resetting him to the moment between life and death, seemingly immortal and invulnerable when he's really just stuck in time. Regarding the foreigners, aside from underestimating what they knew, he reveals they really wanted to eliminate anyone involved with the Temsic meteorite, including him. Speaking to the junkyard incident, he admits Lynn's willpower fought off his possessions so well it was the first time he struggled controlling someone, causing him to fire and even miss the first shot. It was at this time he saw the foreigners were taking matters into their own hands and ignoring his schemes for revenge, but he also saw a new ghost emerge from the incident, Sissel. After that, the rest of the evening is history, as the manipulator says this sub was meant to be his coffin from the beginning. Hearing all this, Lynn feels genuinely sorry for the manipulator, much to his surprise. Regardless, Sissel wonders why Sith ejected the manipulator's body into the sea after they got what they wanted, and suddenly Lynn comes up with the idea to use the tracker to find the body, which is where Jode is, and shoot a dud torpedo to them with the ghosts on board. Their desperate plan works as they find Joe dead and connect to him as the detective recognizes the manipulator and calls him by his real name, Yomiel. Confused on why the foreigners called him a different name, Yomiel tells Sissel he was just using an alias. He reveals he was once a hotshot systems engineer, reorganizing the nation's top-secret information with a new multi-dimensional programming theory. Naturally, this attracted the attention of spies, which led to Yomiel being accused of being one, which is why the police arrested him, starting all of the events that fateful day 10 years ago. Jode adds Yomiel was actually proven innocent 6 months after his death, but it was too late. Yomiel was already sinking into despair, wanting to disappear, but was unable to do so. This feeling festered into revenge, which led to Yomiel killing Jode's wife 5 years ago while making the deal with Sith to help him with his revenge plot and set up a new life for himself somewhere else and try to live a normal life and die a normal death. He admits he was manipulated himself and never saw the betrayal coming, as both of their nations were researching and battling an invisible war to understand and obtain the Temsic meteorite. Now deciding to rewind time, they see Sith's muscle man was just a remote-controlled robot, Yomiel's body was discarded as insurance, and Jode was gunned down. Yomiel realizes that with the Temsic fragment removed, his shell is now a regular corpse, no longer stuck in time, and Sissel thinks they can now go back to 4 minutes before Yomiel's death, even though that death was 10 years ago. Rewinding all the way to the standoff Yomiel had with the young Lynn and Jode, they see a strange black cat was also there right before the impact ended things. Sissel suggests they save Yomiel's life, but Jode points out the younger him was going to take the shot and kill Yomiel anyway. Reflecting, Yomiel says he's ready to stop running and accept his overdue fate, and working together, the ghost team deflects the meteorite from striking him. Instead, they use their 3 powers to merely wound Jode, stab but not kill Yomiel, and save Lynn from her habit of dying young. In the end, Yomiel would be crushed but not killed, and he's happy with that, as Lynn finds the black cat and Yomiel explains Sissel's fate is about to change in a big way. Shocked, Sissel realizes the odd black cat was actually him this entire time, as during the standoff he was a stray that served as Yomiel's first vessel to possess. When Yomiel regained his memories and that body, he left the cat and rushed home to his fiancée. However, she had committed suicide in order to follow him in death, and depressed, Yomiel's mind twisted, but he found companionship in the black cat, naming it Sissel after her. That night in the junkyard, he escaped the scene of the crime by borrowing the body of his old friend again, but this time came to the horrible realization Sissel was dead. By accident, when Yomiel was struggling to control Lynn, his first shot accidentally killed his friend Sissel, and because Sissel was next to the Temsic fragment is why he woke up as a ghost with powers. Sissel realizes he only thought he was Yomiel because he was the first corpse he saw, even though it wasn't the only one there. Yomiel then tells his friend that even though he knew he was helping Lynn this whole time, he couldn't do anything about stopping Sissel's time rewinding power since he didn't have that power himself. He adds that even if he did, the first thing he would have done was save Sissel's life, both his friend and his fiancée. However, the past is now altered and everyone's alive, meaning his fiancée is too. To himself, Yomiel is glad this revenge ended in failure, thinking Lynn's empathy for him in the end saved his soul. He tells the other 3 ghosts that even though a new 10 years will play out for all of them, they will retain all their memories of this timeline as ghosts, and Jode is glad to have a chance to redo his greatest mistake in his life. Before time resumes for them all, Yomiel apologizes to them all, and Sissel forgives his friend, remarking it's a lost past now. Missile promises to see them all again, and Jode offers to adopt Sissel for now. Cutting in is Ray, somehow talking to Sissel again in this time period, and Sissel asks to know who he really is. Agreeing to tell the story, Ray begins by saying this isn't the first timeline to be attempted to fix things, as in another version of these 10 years, there was a time when Yomiel was present when the assassins came to Lynn's apartment, killing both Missile and Camilla, though Missile was in the presence of the radiation this time. He still gained his swapping powers, and though he also made it to the end with the man in red in the sea, he could not save his timeline. So he rewound time and went back 10 years using the man in red just like they did, but this time he would wait it out until that fateful night of the junkyard would take place again. Revealing himself to be Missile from the lost timeline, he remarks that 10 years is a very long time in dog years, as his swap powers grew weak and he instead grew weak manipulation like Sissel, but needed Sissel's strength this time. Sissel also had a unique kit of powers he didn't have, and he knew this because he met the Sissel of that timeline who died and gained powers too. However, that Sissel selfishly refused to cooperate with him, and so in the next timeline, Missile knew to leverage Sissel's selfishness and confusion. He also admits the bit about disappearing the next morning was just a lie to get Sissel focused on a series of unfortunate events about to take place that night. However, he will not be able to exist in this new timeline he helped build, and thanks Sissel for helping make it happen. As the game ends, a new present unfolds as Lynn celebrates her promotion to detective with Jode, who introduces her to his daughter Camilla and cat Sissel, who oddly has not seemed to have aged a day. Jode's wife would join them in the party, as would Cabanela and Missile, and elsewhere the Justice Minister would have a much healthier marriage and work-life balance. Finally, Yomiel, though proven innocent of being a spy, would still go to jail for his other crimes committed that night, though after finishing a painting of his best friend, the ace pet detective, would go out into the world to his waiting fiancé, a free man with a fresh start. Recognizing the kitten as the same one from 10 years ago, Lynn greets Sissel again, as to himself, Sissel reveals the deflected Temsic struck him instead in the past, preserving himself between life and death, and his ghost tricks. Ghost Trick Phantom Detective has enjoyed the success of selling over 380,000 copies worldwide. Thanks for watching the video. I hope one day this crosses over with Ace Attorney as the creator once wanted to. If you enjoyed the recap, then leave a like, and big thanks to the patron and channel member detectives. Links are in the description for how to support the channel and get extra videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next battlefield.